Thanks, Melvin. We have some time for some questions for Dr. Baker. So let's use the power of the technology. Yes, in the front.
More of a comment than a question. Two things that we had found out, which I think were very important through different projects we went, is you can never overestimate the amount of time it's going to take to QC a project. You think you're going to rush through it, and the amount of time that it takes to really give it a good QC, whether that be from going through for just banging on it to make sure that all the buttons work, making sure that they get the correct feedback on the different kinds of questions, and also going through to make sure that it goes according to the correct style guide. And that always takes a lot more time than you think it's going to take. And the other thing we found out painfully, on a couple projects, we didn't talk to the customer up front to find out the vocabulary that is sacrosanct in their field, that our communications people should not go through and change because it's an overused word or it's too much of a generality. So we found out that it's really good to have the QC people meet up front and find out things about capitalization or vocabulary that should not be changed no matter what the style guide says.
Absolutely, absolutely. We do a lot of what's called red teaming in QC, and of course my backward planning always has extra time. Even when we develop our modules, we teach it to ourselves. We get rid of the fluff, we get rid of the redundancy, the stuff that we don't need. We change our slides, and I always pad that so that when I build my timeline, I've got an extra week or two in there, or 3 weeks, or even a month in there, depending on the project, just for those changes. And you're absolutely right. Vocabulary will absolutely destroy you if you're not careful. And there are some vocabulary terms you want to make sure that don't change, but you need a common ground for that term. Absolutely. Good comments.
Back to the back here. Comment.
Hey, Melvin, I wonder if you have any rules of thumb or guidelines on how long it takes you to develop using certain media. You hear all kinds of 40 to 1, 100 to 1, et cetera, using different technology. What's been your experience, or what do you use when you estimate your customer the length of time to develop e-learning or distance education modules and for your costs?
That's a very good question, and it comes up almost all the time. And one of the big questions I get is right off the bat is how long will it take and how much money does it cost? And usually my analogy is, well, how much does a car cost? And people go, what do you mean? I said, well, until we sit down and you tell me the blend, the interactivity level, the multimedia you want me to use. But then what I normally try to do to try to answer your question, a lot of people say it's 100 hours to 1 hour of instruction, things of that nature. I don't really use that. I sit down with my team and we analyze the objectives based on what the people tell us to the multimedia, and evaluation has a lot to do with it. Is this going to be knowledge-based, performance-based? How much interactivity do I have to have with the student? And I hate to say this, I really don't have a rule of thumb. I usually request time to sit down with my people to come back, and then I tell them, and I've lost contracts because I said I can't do this in 30 days. I can't do this in 60 days. It will take this long as a minimum. And I've had people say, well, I'm going to find somebody that can develop this course in 30 days for me and get it to the field. And good luck to them, and I wish them well. I know my capabilities. I know the capabilities of the 6 people on my team. I know I didn't answer your question, but that question probably comes up more than any other question on a contract. How do you base the time? How do you base the hours? And it's tough. A lot of it's just gut experience. Sorry.
Other questions?
Here's another question, Mike or Melvin. What are the biggest problems that you've experienced in project management with customers? When you look back in your 8 years or so, and you say, what are the red flags? Where are the biggest problems here? I know you covered, those were your bullet points. But if you can relate, maybe your top 3 areas in projects that are trouble areas to get right. What's your lessons learned?
The first one is agreeing on the original statement of work. And what is just terribly important is that if you can get a read ahead of it, go through it, mark everything, and then actually sit down with the customer, and that's probably one. Two is the lines of communications. I've had some projects where they simply say, this is your point of contact, but I had a point of contact that wouldn't take charge, wouldn't make decisions, wouldn't get answers, and I tell you this right up front, if you get a point of contact that's not doing their job, you're going to have to act on it, and you got to be real tactful in this. You got to be real careful, but you may have to go with the point of contact's head and say, I've got to have someone I can work with on a daily basis or a weekly basis, or I've got to be able to get this done. That's the most painful. I've only had to do that once, which I thought would jeopardize the project, but it did not. And then I guess the next one is delegating the task to all my people and giving them their timeline. The way I like to work, I've got great people, and I trust all of them. I give them their task. I tell them when they have to give it back to me, and I tell them they can work on it anywhere they want. I allow my people to work in the office. They can work at home. They can go to research libraries. They can do whatever they want. But on that date, they're responsible to me to have their courseware, their product ready. And to date, I've had no problems with that. But you have to be careful also. You really have to know your people.